Hello, and welcome to this exploration of one of the most tumultuous periods in modern Chinese history, the Cultural Revolution. I'm fascinated by how this decade of chaos reshaped China's society and politics, leaving scars that are still felt today. The Cultural Revolution was launched by Mao Zedong in 1966, ostensibly to preserve Chinese communism by purging remnants of capitalist and traditional elements from society. But in reality, it was Mao's attempt to reassert control and eliminate his political rivals after the disasters of the Great Leap Forward. What followed was a decade of upheaval that turned Chinese society upside down. The origins of the Cultural Revolution can be traced back to the aftermath of the Great Leap Forward, Mao's disastrous attempt at rapid industrialization that led to widespread famine. By the early 1960s, Mao had been sidelined within the Communist Party leadership. Moderates like Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping were ascendant, implementing more pragmatic economic policies. But Mao was not content to fade into the background. He saw these moderates as a threat to his vision of continuous revolution. And so, in 1966, Mao made his move to eliminate his rivals and reignite revolutionary fervor across China. Mao's opening salvo came in the form of a circular issued in May 1966, later known as the May 16th Notification. This document, prepared under Mao's supervision, accused representatives of the bourgeoisie of infiltrating the party and government. It called for these elements to be purged in order to prevent the restoration of capitalism. Though initially kept secret, this notification set the stage for the upheaval to come. Mao was effectively declaring war on much of the party establishment, using revolutionary rhetoric to justify what was essentially a power grab. The vague language about bourgeois elements allowed Mao and his allies to target virtually anyone. Those representatives of the bourgeoisie who have sneaked into the party, the government, the army, and various spheres of culture are a bunch of counter-revolutionary revisionists. Once conditions are ripe, they will seize political power and turn the dictatorship of the proletariat into a dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. The Cultural Revolution truly kicked into high gear in the summer of 1966 with the emergence of the Red Guards. These were groups of young people, mainly students, who answered Mao's call to bombard the headquarters and root out capitalist roaders within the party. The Red Guards were given free rein to attack old customs, old culture, old habits, and old ideas, the so-called Four Olds. This unleashed a wave of iconoclasm across China, as young zealots destroyed historical sites and cultural relics. It's difficult to overstate just how much chaos this unleashed. Suddenly, teenagers and university students were empowered to publicly humiliate their teachers, parents, and local officials. Anyone seen as insufficiently revolutionary became a target. I find the psychology behind the Red Guard movement fascinating. Many of these young people were genuinely inspired by revolutionary ideals and a desire to serve the country. But the movement also allowed for the settling of personal scores and indulgence of violent impulses. The Red Guards were given a moral blank check by Mao himself. In August 1966, Mao attended a massive Red Guard rally in Tiananmen Square, donning a Red Guard armband himself. This was essentially Mao's endorsement of the mounting violence and chaos. With the blessing of the great helmsman, the Red Guards felt empowered to take extreme actions in the name of revolution. The world is yours, as well as ours, but in the last analysis, it is yours. You young people, full of vigour and vitality, are in the bloom of life, like the sun at 8 or 9 in the morning. Our hope is placed on you. The violence soon spiralled out of control. In Beijing alone, over 1,600 people were beaten to death by Red Guards in August and September 1966. Across the country, countless others were subjected to public humiliation, torture, and imprisonment. The targets were often intellectuals, those from bad class backgrounds, and anyone accused of being insufficiently revolutionary. Even high-ranking party officials weren't safe. Future leader Deng Xiaoping's son was left paralysed after being thrown from a window during a struggle session. The country descended into what was essentially civil war in many areas, as rival Red Guard factions battled for supremacy. It's a stark reminder of how quickly social order can break down when the normal rules are suspended. Central to the Cultural Revolution was the cult of personality built around Mao Zedong. Mao was elevated to an almost godlike status, with his image and words omnipresent throughout China. The Little Red Book of Mao's quotations became ubiquitous, with millions of copies printed. People were expected to study Mao's words daily and be able to quote them from memory. This cult reached absurd extremes at times. There's a famous incident known as Mango Fever that I think illustrates this well. In 1968, Mao was given a crate of mangoes by the Pakistani foreign minister. Mao then passed these mangoes on to worker peasant Mao Zedong thought propaganda teams. These mangoes, touched by the great helmsman himself, took on an almost sacred significance. They were placed on altars, sealed in wax, paraded through the streets, and even boiled into a holy mango soup that people lined up to taste. Replica wax mangoes were sent around the country to be worshipped. It would be comical if it weren't so tragic. This mango mania was happening against a backdrop of political violence and economic disruption. But it shows the extent to which Mao had become deified in the popular imagination. This cult of Mao was a powerful tool for mobilizing the masses, but it also insulated Mao from criticism and reality, with disastrous consequences. Seeing that golden mango was as if seeing the great leader Chairman Mao. Again and again, touching that golden mango, the golden mango was so warm. The elevation of Mao went hand in hand with the denigration of traditional Chinese culture and values. Confucianism, which had been the bedrock of Chinese society for millennia, was particularly targeted as a source of feudal thinking. Traditional operas were banned and replaced with revolutionary model operas that glorified proletarian heroes. Even personal names were affected, with many people changing their names to revolutionary slogans. It was a wholesale attempt to remake Chinese culture with Mao at its centre. The long-term consequences of this assault on traditional culture are still debated in China today. As the Cultural Revolution progressed, it became clear that this was not just a grassroots movement, but a power struggle at the highest levels of the Chinese Communist Party. Mao's initial targets were the capitalist roaders led by Liu Shaoxi and Deng Xiaoping. Liu, who had been Mao's chosen successor, was subjected to brutal persecution and died in prison in 1969. Deng was purged and sent to work in a tractor factory. But as these moderate leaders fell, new factions emerged to vie for power. The most prominent of these was led by Lin Biao, who had been elevated to the position of Mao's heir apparent. Lin Biao's rise and fall is one of the most dramatic episodes of the Cultural Revolution. As head of the People's Liberation Army, Lin played a crucial role in building the cult of Mao and suppressing opposition to the Cultural Revolution. He was responsible for compiling the Little Red Book of Mao quotations that became the Bible of the movement. By 1969, Lin's position seemed unassailable. The new constitution even named him as Mao's successor. But Mao, ever paranoid about threats to his power, soon began to see Lin as a potential rival. Vice Chairman Lin has always been loyal to the party and loyal to the people. He has always stood in the forefront of the proletarian revolutionary line represented by Chairman Mao. He has always been a close comrade in arms of Chairman Mao. The circumstances of Lin Biao's downfall remain shrouded in mystery and controversy. The official narrative claims that in September 1971, Lin and his family attempted to flee to the Soviet Union after the failure of a planned coup against Mao. Their plane crashed in Mongolia, killing all aboard. However, many historians doubt this account, suggesting it may have been fabricated to discredit Lin. Whatever the truth, Lin's purge marked a turning point in the Cultural Revolution. It shattered the image of unity in the party leadership and led to a scaling back of the PLA's political role. The Lin Biao incident also forced Mao to reassess his approach, leading to a gradual winding down of the Cultural Revolution's most radical aspects. The Cultural Revolution officially ended with Mao's death in 1976, but its effects continued to reverberate through Chinese society for years to come. The immediate aftermath saw the arrest of the Gang of Four, led by Mao's wife Jiang Qing, who were blamed for the excesses of the Cultural Revolution. This allowed the party to distance itself from the chaos of the previous decade, while maintaining Mao's overall legacy. But the task of rebuilding China's economy and institutions was enormous. millions of young people who had been sent to the countryside as part of the Down to the Countryside movement returned to cities, creating massive unemployment. The education system, which had been disrupted for years, needed to be rebuilt from the ground up. It fell to Deng Xiaoping, one of the main targets of the Cultural Revolution, to chart a new course for China. Deng's pragmatic approach, encapsulated in sayings like, "It doesn't matter whether a cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice," marked a decisive break with Maoist ideology. Under Deng's leadership, China embarked on a program of reform and opening up that transformed the country into an economic powerhouse. But while Deng repudiated the excesses of the Cultural Revolution, he maintained the Communist Party's monopoly on power. The party's official verdict on the Cultural Revolution, issued in 1981, described it as a grave blunder that was responsible for the most severe setback and the heaviest losses suffered by the party, the country, and the people. If we don't do this, it is going to be impossible to unite the people. We must unite the people. We must unite the whole party. We must make a clear distinction between right and wrong, between merits and demerits. We must affirm what is right and correct what is wrong. The legacy of the Cultural Revolution in China today is complex and often contradictory. On one hand, it's officially condemned as a catastrophic mistake, but on the other, there's a resurgence of neo-Maoist sentiment among some segments of the population, particularly those who feel left behind by China's economic reforms. The current Chinese leadership under Xi Jinping has sought to thread a careful line, condemning the excesses of the Cultural Revolution while still upholding Mao's overall legacy. But the scars of that tumultuous decade remain. Millions of lives were disrupted or destroyed, and the trauma of that period still echoes through Chinese society. As a historian, I believe it's crucial that we continue to study and understand this period, not just for its importance to Chinese history, but for the lessons it offers about the dangers of unchecked political power and ideological fervor. As we conclude our exploration of the Cultural Revolution, I'm struck by the immense complexity of this period in Chinese history. It's a stark reminder of how quickly a society can descend into chaos when normal constraints are removed. The Cultural Revolution was, in many ways, a revolution that devoured its own children. Those who were revolutionary zealots one day could find themselves branded as counter-revolutionaries the next. The human cost was staggering, with millions persecuted and countless lives upended. Yet it's also important to recognise that many who participated, especially young Red Guards, genuinely believed they were building a better society. The road to hell, as they say, is often paved with good intentions. One of the most striking aspects of the Cultural Revolution, to me, is how it demonstrates the power of ideology to shape reality. Mao's words and ideas became a kind of scripture, interpreted and reinterpreted to justify all manner of actions. This cult of personality had disastrous consequences, insulating leadership from criticism and reality. It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of elevating any leader or ideology to an unquestionable status. At the same time, the Cultural Revolution also saw genuine attempts at social levelling and mass participation in politics. Some scholars argue that despite the chaos, it led to improvements in rural healthcare and education. These complexities make it a challenging period to assess, and opinions in China today remain divided. The Cultural Revolution was a mistake, but it was a mistake made by a great proletarian revolutionary. If we judge Chairman Mao's achievements and mistakes by the ratio of 7-3, we will be making a correct assessment. As we look back on the Cultural Revolution from the vantage point of the 21st century, its relevance extends far beyond China. It offers sobering lessons about the potential for mass movements to spiral out of control, the dangers of personality cults, and the fragility of social and cultural institutions in the face of ideological fervor. These are lessons that, unfortunately, seem to need constant relearning across different societies and political systems. For China, the memory of the Cultural Revolution continues to shape political discourse and policy. The current leadership's emphasis on stability and order can be seen, in part, as a reaction against the chaos of that era. Yet the underlying tensions that fueled the Cultural Revolution, between egalitarianism and elitism, between rapid change and stability, continue to play out in Chinese society today. As historians and observers of China, Our challenge is to continue to grapple with this complex legacy, seeking to understand its full dimensions and lasting impacts. Thank you for joining me on this journey through one of the most tumultuous periods in modern Chinese history. The Cultural Revolution remains a subject of intense debate and study, and I hope this video has provided some insight into its complexities. If you found this exploration valuable, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Your support makes it possible for me to continue delving into these fascinating historical topics. Do let me know in the comments if there are other aspects of Chinese history you'd like me to cover in future videos. Until next time, thank you for watching.